Hello, Daryl here. The channel is Programming in Any Language. The supporting website is programminginanylanguage.com or black-duck.com. They both take you to the same place. That's a place where you'll find the videos and PDFs of the code. The video is Null Values. Creating instances of objects takes up memory. C# provides a garbage collection routine that runs periodically and removes objects that are no longer being referenced in your program. How does it know what objects aren't being referenced? Well, any instance that is set to null is no longer being referenced in your program. You, the programmer, don't control the garbage collections routine. What you do control when an instance is no longer needed. This video shows you how to set instances to null and how to check for instances that might be null. We're going to take a look at the concept of clearing memory and taking a look at what happens when references to objects are gone, they disappear, or how we can make them disappear. All this has to do with null values and the garbage collection. That's what we're going to talk about today. Null is a special value that represents no value. If a reference type variable is assigned the value null, it means that the variable refers to no object whatsoever. You cannot perform operations that require the existence of an object with a reference variable that is assigned to a null value. It simply doesn't exist. There are only a few operations that can be performed with the value null without throwing an exception. You can initialize a reference type variable to the value of null. You can assign null to an existing reference type variable. You can check a reference type variable to determine whether or not it is set to null. And you can pass a null as an argument to a reference type parameter in a method. And you can run a method that returns a null. Well, what does all this mean? Well, it has a lot to do with memory. You wouldn't do this, but if you create an instance of a class and then set that instance to null, the instance no longer exists. The reference is gone. And what you're looking at here is basically we've created a student instance and gave it the values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Daffy Duck. Basically a student ID number and a name. And then we immediately take that student and make it null. As soon as we do that, we try to do a message box to show what's in the student, and there's nothing there. So we get an error. It actually blows up, period. Dies. You wouldn't want to do this, but the concept here is that once you set something to null, it's gone. You know, that reference pointer is simply not there anymore. This is our class on the side of the student, and you got the get and set properties of ID and name, and we're bringing it in nice and all that, but setting it is not going to work right. A simple if statement can be used to check if the instance is null before doing any operation. So if you happen to have a situation like this, where we set up the student, new 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Daffy Duck, and then set the null, we can say if student is not equal to null, go ahead and do the message box. And you won't generate an error then. It'll actually come through and do this because it did not, well, I actually won't do this because it's not null. I mean, if it is null, it's going to bypass this particular code. If it's not null, then we'll go ahead and show whatever happens to be in the student area. This gets a lot cleaner as you start looking at this in a little more detail. In this case, we're using the get expresso data, and we're checking for null. If it is null, the code within the braces won't execute, but null will be returned to the calling button. So we're looking here. We're basically expresso, my expresso, new expresso. We're creating an my expresso instance. We're then going to get the expresso data, passing my expresso to the get expresso data method. Goes through the process of getting the decimal price, the machine and brand and model from the text box, and then goes in there and tries to do it to try parse. We get the number and return machine. So we're returning it to this thing right now. So basically it comes back to here, and we can display the data. My message box show my expresso to string, and it works just fine. So what we're looking at here is if for some reason the button create passed a null to this get expresso data method, it would check to make sure it's not null, so it would actually do these particular things. Otherwise, it'll bypass all this code. But in both instances, it'll return machine. So it can return a null if it was passed a null, is what's happening here. Now, this brings up null values on the garbage collector. When an object is no longer needed, it should be removed from memory. So the memory can be used for other purposes. In this example, my expresso instance is created. You can see that right here. My expresso is being created right here. It's passed to the get expresso data method, And then the message, it's displayed in a message box. So we're getting the data once it's created here, and we get back to here. My message box.show myExpresso to string. And then once it's displayed, the reference is removed by setting the instance to null. So here we're actually bypassing it. We're getting rid of the reference. It no longer exists, and memory is freed up. The garbage collector will take off, and we'll actually run this thing. Otherwise, it has worked. It's worked fine. It's got our Expresso data. It showed it and everything else, and then we're done with it. We don't need it anymore, so we set it to null, and it's gone. The garbage collector process runs periodically. You don't control this, though. It's all automatic. When an instance no longer has a reference, it is no longer accessible. The garbage collection process removes it the next time it runs. You don't know when it's going to run, but it'll run periodically, and it'll remove it, get rid of that memory, and free it up so we have more memory for any other application we're actually running. Now, the string data type is a reference type. If a class has an uninitialized string or as a field or property, it will be set to null by default. You need to be careful not to use null string field to call a string method or access one of the string's properties, such as length. We've got this Expresso class over here. We've got both where it's not initialized and it is initialized. The not initialized piece shows that we have a constructor but nothing in it. So we just have the public string brand, the property is sitting here, brand, model, price, and there's a get and set there, but there's nothing initialized. We also have an override string for returning, and we got this new method, int length, get return brand length plus brand model length. So it's going to take the brand length and the model length, add it together, and return an integer, basically, if we ask for it. Now, if the initialized string, we've actually got Expresso, we've got brand, model, and price sitting in here, and we're setting the brand and model with double quotes right here, and a 0 for the price. So it is being actually initialized, so we've got some value in there before we do the get and set and everything else. So that's what these two properties look like. We're going to look at what happens when we do it not initialized and when we do it initialized by following the same example. In line 49 of this guy right here, the button create, we are creating myExpresso, an instance of the Expresso class. In line 50, following it, we're going to have a message box which is going to show the myExpresso length to string. So it's going to call that length we just saw a few minutes ago. This stuff right in here, length. These two classes are identical except for the fact that nothing's been initialized. So that length is going to get called here so we can return that number. And remember, this is prior to calling the get expression data myExpresso. So we may be typing something into the fields of the form, but nothing's being acted on because we're actually stopping at this message box.show it. Either it's going to fail or it's going to go forward, depending on what we've actually done here. So when we don't initialize the properties in our class, brand and model are not initialized as they are null. There is no length associated with the properties, and exceptions thrown. We typed in KitchenAid, FC1, 1099. Remember, these things did not get read yet because the get data is not there. But as soon as it ran, it tried to do the length property and blew up. It was calling the length. You can see that back here as well. Right down here, we create the instance, and we look for the length and try to display that in our two-string, with a two-string here, and show it in there. We never get to the get Expresso piece on here. So what's happening? It's dying. Even though data was entered, the get Expresso data method had not been called at this point, so we end up throwing an error. Now, if we do have initialized properties in the class, there's no problem. The string's initialized. We've got the double quotes, and a 0 here. Everything's the same. That's the only thing different right now is the fact we've initialized this kind of thing, and we're running the program the same way. Once we do that, as soon as we type in the data, it doesn't really matter because as soon as we do a create object, it doesn't get the data yet. It displays the length of that particular property. So by initializing the values, we don't have any problems with the methods running. Another way to handle the strings, of course, is initialize the string properties. This too will result in the program running just fine. You can see it here. We don't have anything in the constructor, but we are setting the brand, model, and price to double quotes, and 0. And this will run fine as well. This is our first example where we've got that brand, model, and price sitting with the create object piece in there. The Expresso, the Expresso class in this case, we have nothing there. Nothing's been set. So this is gonna give us that error. And it does so by jumping through and going ahead and doing the button and the message. We're only going to get to this particular string here. If I run it, you're going to see exactly what happens. It comes up. We type in a brand of some kind. I'm just going to type in BB here and XX here and maybe 10 in the price here. Hit create object and bang, we blow up right away because it goes ahead and gets that brand length and model length. There's nothing there. These have not been initialized. So we have null sitting out here and it dies on us. That very same program, this time with the Expresso class being initialized in the constructor, and then using our code, which is identical right in here again, we're going to my Expresso, then the message box, and the get Expresso. This thing will run. We'll start in this thing and go ahead, type in our DD and our SS and our 10 again, and this time we got a 0. It goes ahead and checks that message box length there. That's working just fine. Now when I hit OK, it's going to jump into the Get Expresso and finish the program. We go in there and gets our DSS and $10 sitting out here. So it's working just fine from that standpoint. And then it sets the Expresso to null. And now, right now, it's cleared out. It's not there. We still see data in our form, but right now, at this point, it's gone. We no longer have this My Expresso null again. We can certainly go ahead and do it again. We get our 0 again. And we get our GHS dollar. It's just fine. It comes out just fine. So this is working just fine. And that's that last example I showed you. We actually used the first one here and did a modification of the Expresso class here. And we left it blank here, but we initialized it in the properties by putting the double quotes in here and putting that in case. With doing this is going to allow it to work as well. So it's just going to be fine. We're going to be able to run this code and it's going to just work fine again. So we'll do a start on here. And it comes up. I'm going to put in real words this time. KitchenAid, FS1, and $1,000. Hit the create, and bang, we get 0 for length. Prior to actually reading in this data, we get 0 for the two pieces that are the brand and the model coming in. And we go ahead further on down, and it's going to jump to the Get Expresso. It's going to go and get that data, and we're going to see KitchenAid FS1 1000. It's working just fine. And then it will null everything out and remove our reference to that particular instance of the class. So that's what we're talking about here. So quite frankly, this isn't something you'd work a lot with, but it does give the idea of clearing up memory. And usually we're using the same instance over and over again, so we're doing kind of the same thing. My Expresso data gets used. We wouldn't have to get rid of it because if we used it again, it would replace data, put more data in there, using the same memory over and over again. But if you had a program where you're using a bunch of different classes and instances and you grab the data and then the program is still going to run for a long time, say it was a program that simply ran and checked things, was there something that kept on going until you turned it off, you don't want that memory sitting in there and storing up and maybe accumulating and building more and more stuff as it goes through there. You want to be able to erase that memory, so then you'd set it to null. So those are the instances you'd actually use it in. So it's not very common to think of these things, but it's something you need to know. It's something that's worthwhile seeing. But that basic is null and the garbage collector in a nutshell. And there you have it. Null values in the garbage collection. Thanks for watching. Visit the website when you get a chance, and please subscribe to the channel. There's more stuff coming every week. We'll see you in the next video. Take care.